She was a girl who carried laughter like a weapon. It wasn't the kind of laughter that filled a room with joy or made people feel welcome. It was sharp, teasing, and cutting. Whenever she saw children playing around her, whether in the streets, at the park, or during family gatherings, she couldn't help but comment on their appearances. "Look at their faces," she would say under her breath, or sometimes louder. "So plain, so awkward, so ugly." Her words were delivered with a kind of pride, as if pointing out the flaws of others made her clever or superior. She laughed at their missteps, at the way their hair stuck out, or how their clothes didn't fit just right. People around her often shifted uncomfortably. Parents would frown, children would glance down or shy away, and friends sometimes tried to quiet her. Yet, she never stopped. In her mind, she wasn't being cruel. She was being honest, witty, and observant. She thought that noticing these imperfections made her smart and maybe even powerful. Every laugh, every comment became part of her identity, like a badge she wore proudly. She didn't realize that while she believed she was amusing or insightful, her words left tiny marks on the hearts of those she mocked. Even though she surrounded herself with people, there was a certain loneliness to her laughter. It was sharp and bright on the outside, but it had a hollow echo that no one could reach. Her jokes became a shield, keeping others at a distance and keeping herself safe from the vulnerability of genuine connection. She had no idea that the very habit that made her feel confident was also slowly isolating her from the warmth of human empathy and understanding. This was her world, a world where laughter could wound as easily as it could charm, and where judgment felt natural, even necessary. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that made her sharp words seem natural, almost inevitable. In her mind, she wasn't mean, she was discerning, witty, and clever. Every comment she made about others' appearances, every laugh at someone else's expense, was a statement of her intelligence, her honesty. She believed that pointing out flaws was a skill, a kind of social insight that set her apart from those who simply smiled politely and looked the other way. Her friends often marveled at how easily she could spot imperfections: the crooked smile of a toddler, the slightly mismatched clothes of a classmate, the way someone's hair refused to lie flat. She noticed everything, cataloged it in her mind, and delivered her observations with a flourish. There was pride in her precision. She thought it showed discernment and strength. To her, laughter wasn't just amusement. It was proof that she understood the world better than most, that she could judge accurately, and that she was fearless in saying what others only thought quietly. Yet beneath this self-assured exterior, there was an invisible wall. Her sharpness and relentless teasing kept people at a distance. Adults raised eyebrows at her remarks. Friends occasionally exchanged uneasy glances, and even children seemed to shrink away when she laughed. She didn't see it as isolation. She saw it as respect, as acknowledgement of her authority and observation. Vulnerability, kindness, and empathy were weaknesses she had learned to avoid. They didn't fit the image of herself she had carefully built. Every word, every laugh, became part of her identity. She prided herself on being honest, on being the one who spoke the truth. But in reality, her confidence came with a cost: a growing distance from others, and a life colored by judgment rather than understanding. She was sharp, observant, and witty, but she was also blind to the quiet power of compassion, the kind of empathy that could connect her to the world she so eagerly measured and ranked. Her words did not go unnoticed. Wherever she laughed and spoke, people felt the sting. Parents would pull their children a little closer, casting wary glances at her, while children, sensing the sharpness in her tone, would shrink or fidget. Even strangers in the park or on the street would tense, as if her laughter carried a weight they couldn't escape. It was a sound that drew attention but left a subtle mark of discomfort, a tiny ripple of unease in every space she entered. Friends sometimes tried to intervene. "Hey, maybe don't say that out loud." One would whisper, half amused, half worried. Another would roll their eyes or sigh, hoping she'd stop, but she never did. Her confidence was a shield, and in her mind, no one had the right to challenge her honest observations. Even when scolded lightly, she laughed it off, shrugging as if the world simply didn't understand the value of her words. Yet there were moments that revealed the unintended consequences of her behavior. Children she mocked would avoid her gaze, retreating into their games without ever speaking to her. Families would exchange uncomfortable looks when she made remarks about someone's clothes or face. Over time, these subtle reactions began to build an invisible wall around her. While she believed her sharpness gave her authority, the truth was that it created distance. People were present, yet emotionally removed, treating her humor as a barrier rather than a bridge. In the eyes of those around her, she was clever, yes, but also isolating. Her laughter, which she thought of as her strength, was a double-edged sword. It drew attention but repelled warmth. It demonstrated wit, but at the cost of connection. In the small gestures of avoidance, of whispered disapproval, and of polite silences, the world quietly reflected back to her the impact of her actions, a reflection she had yet to fully understand. One afternoon, she wandered into the park as she often did, her laughter trailing behind her like a shadow. The sun was low, casting long golden streaks across the paths where children played and families gathered. She moved through the crowd with her usual confidence, eyes scanning for little details to remark upon. A crooked smile here, a messy ponytail there. Everything became material for her amusement. She chuckled quietly to herself, imagining the cleverness of her observations, completely unaware of the way her presence rippled through the scene. Then, she noticed a puddle glimmering in the sunlight, the remnants of a recent rain. Curiosity pulled her closer, and without thinking, she looked down. At first, it was just water, rippling slightly under the wind. But slowly, her reflection emerged, fragmented yet clear. For a fleeting moment, she expected to see the same confident, untouchable girl she had always believed herself to be. Instead, the reflection staring back was unsettling. Her eyes, usually bright with mischief, seemed harder, colder. Her smile, the one she used to cut others down, looked empty, as if it carried a loneliness she had never admitted to. The world around her, the children, the families, the laughter in the air, suddenly felt different. It was as though the puddle wasn't showing her face, but her effect on the people around her. The light glinted off the water, catching the small imperfections, but it also caught something deeper, the isolation she had been blind to. She felt a strange tug in her chest, an unfamiliar stirring of self-awareness. The laughter that had always been her armor now seemed heavy, echoing back at her in a way she had never noticed before. In that quiet, golden moment, the first crack appeared in the wall she had built around herself. She hadn't expected it, not the reflection, not the realization, and yet it demanded her attention. Something was about to change. The moment she looked into the puddle, the unexpected hit her like a quiet, undeniable wave. The reflection didn't just show her face, it revealed her essence. For the first time, she saw herself not as clever, witty, or confident, but as harsh, judgmental, and unkind. Her eyes, once lively with mischief, now seemed distant, guarded, and a little lonely. Her smile, the one she used to laugh at others' flaws, looked hollow, carrying a weight she hadn't realized she had been building for herself all these years. It was startling. She had always believed that pointing out imperfections made her smart, even powerful. But now, staring into that puddle, she saw the truth. Those same words that had given her pride also pushed people away. Children avoided her gaze, friends sometimes distanced themselves, and strangers felt uncomfortable around her. And now, she understood why. Her laughter, which had been her armor and her weapon, reflected back at her in a form she couldn't ignore. It was no longer just a sound. It was a mirror of her isolation. As she lingered there, frozen for a moment, a small breeze stirred the water. The ripples distorted her reflection, reminding her that identity was not fixed. There was room for change. The unexpected feeling in her chest, a mixture of regret, vulnerability, and humility, made her heart beat differently. It was unsettling, yet strangely liberating. For the first time, she considered what her actions truly meant for others, and how her judgment had shaped not only how she saw the world, but how the world saw her. In that golden, quiet moment, she realized that self-awareness could not be avoided. It came uninvited, sudden, and sharp, but it also had the power to open doors she hadn't known existed. The unexpected had arrived, and with it, the beginning of understanding. The feeling in her chest didn't fade. It grew, spreading quietly but insistently, until she could no longer ignore it. Shame settled over her like a heavy cloak, warm and suffocating all at once. She realized, with a sinking clarity, that every sharp word she had spoken, every laugh at someone else's expense, had left a mark, not just on them, but on herself. The confidence she had worn like armor was now exposed as something fragile, built on judgment and distance rather than understanding and connection. She thought back to all the children she had mocked, the parents who had looked at her with quiet disapproval, and the friends who had shifted uncomfortably in her presence. Each memory carried a weight she had never felt before, like echoes bouncing back at her from a mirror she could not avoid. The laughter that had always made her feel clever now felt cruel, hollow, and isolating. It was a revelation she could not dismiss with a shrug or a smile. Her hands shook slightly as she touched the edge of the puddle, tracing the ripples in the water. The reflection was no longer just a physical image. It was a truth she could not escape. She saw herself clearly, the harshness in her gaze, the rigidity of her posture, the coldness in her smile. She had been blind to the emotional distance she created, blind to the loneliness her judgment had sown in the hearts of others. Tears, uninvited but undeniable, pricked at her eyes. Shame and regret mingled with a strange clarity. She could no longer pretend that her sharpness was harmless. For the first time, she felt the weight of empathy pressing against her, urging her to reconsider, to change, to feel, not just to observe or judge. In that quiet, reflective moment, she realized that growth begins with acknowledgement, and acknowledgement begins with humility. After the sharp sting of realization, she remained by the puddle, trembling slightly, her mind racing. Then, a small, innocent gesture shifted something deep inside her. A child playing nearby looked up and smiled at her, not a smile of fear, nor of awkward politeness, but a pure, unguarded smile filled with warmth. It was effortless, natural, and untainted by judgment. For a moment, she froze, unsure how to respond. That smile broke through the walls she had built around herself. She noticed the child's laughter, the bright eyes, and the unself-conscious way they moved through the world. For the first time, she realized the beauty she had overlooked, the life she had dismissed with her harsh words. The contrast between her own loneliness and the child's unself-conscious joy was striking. She felt a strange, unfamiliar urge, not to mock, not to comment, but simply to appreciate. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, her own lips curved into a gentle smile. It was hesitant at first, unsure, but it felt honest. She looked at the families around her, at the children playing, and allowed herself to see their uniqueness without judgment. Their small imperfections, once fodder for ridicule, now felt human and real, not flaws to be criticized. The shift was subtle, yet profound. She began to understand that connection comes from acceptance, not criticism, from empathy, not mockery. For the first time in her life, she laughed without sharpness, soft, genuine laughter that didn't push others away but celebrated their presence. In that small, quiet moment, she understood that change was possible, that her heart could soften, and that seeing beauty in others could also bring beauty into her own life. From that day onward, something inside her transformed. She carried herself differently, not with pride in her judgment, but with humility and awareness. The laughter that had once been sharp and cutting now had warmth. The observations that had once highlighted flaws now noticed beauty, effort, and character. She learned that the way she viewed others reflected the way she viewed herself, and that cruelty, even subtle, ultimately isolated the heart that wielded it. She began to understand a simple truth. Putting others down does not elevate anyone. Her sharp words had been a mirror of her own insecurities, her own disconnection from the world. By mocking children, strangers, and friends alike, she had only built walls around herself, unknowingly keeping genuine connection at bay. But empathy, real empathy, was transformative. It allowed her to experience the world not as a critic, but as a participant, capable of feeling and understanding the lives around her. Over time, people noticed the change. Children smiled openly at her, parents nodded with trust, and friends felt a new warmth in her presence. The space she had once filled with judgment and laughter at others' expense became a space of kindness, respect, and gentle observation. She realized that beauty is not in perfection, but in acceptance, that connection grows not from critique, but from compassion. The moral was clear. The world responds to the heart that gives, not the heart that judges. True happiness, she learned, comes not from pointing out flaws, but from recognizing worth. Her laughter, once a weapon, had become a bridge, a sound that welcomed, celebrated, and healed. And in this transformation, she discovered the most unexpected lesson of all. Seeing the world with empathy can change not only how others see you, but how you see yourself.